Buon pomeriggio a tutti e benvenuti al webinar di questo pomeriggio che a breve vi introdurrò. Parleremo appunto delle business organization per capire come queste forme giuridiche, come le forme giuridiche con cui le aziende hanno a che fare siano importanti. Sia importante capirle per capire qual è il loro modello organizzativo, amministrativo, fiscale, contabile e anche quali implicazioni vi sono a livello commerciale. Quindi abbiamo pensato insieme alla nostra esperta, la nostra relatrice di oggi, che è la dottoressa Dorella Zappa, di proporre questa tematica della quale magari si parla poco e soprattutto di proporla in lingua inglese. Perché in lingua inglese? Perché comunque per darvi appunto un elemento in più di arricchimento rispetto a questa oretta che passeremo insieme, perché le competenze linguistiche in questo senso sono importanti, per cui anche sentire una terminologia appropriata rispetto alle forme giuridiche sicuramente vi potrà aiutare a renderle più familiari e riconoscere e individuarle quando poi vi troverete ad avere a che fare con operatori internazionali. Prima di passare la parola alla nostra relatrice che è già pronta, è già collegata con noi, un rapidissimo sguardo ai servizi di Promos Italia, che lo ricordo è l'agenzia italiana per l'internazionalizzazione del sistema camerale italiano ed è partecipata da 13 camere di commercio distribuite un po' da nord a sud, oltre che da Union Camere Nazionale, Union Camere Lombardia, Union Camere Emilia Romagna. Cerchiamo così di supportare le piccole e medie imprese nei processi di internazionalizzazione attraverso un percorso che parte da un primo livello di formazione, orientamento all'export, fino ad arrivare ad aiutare le aziende nella sezione MECIT, quindi incontri tra operatori internazionali e aziende italiane, e poi ancora tutta la sezione Go Digital che abbraccia un po' tutti i nostri servizi e che prevede l'uso del digitale per affrontare i propri processi di export. Non mi soffermo sulle singole sezioni perché vorrei andare direttamente all'argomento della giornata. Ormai molti di noi ci conoscono, ad ogni modo avrete poi a disposizione le slide. Vi ricordo solo questo servizio Digitexport sul quale noi stiamo sensibilizzando tantissimo le aziende, perché il digitale è sempre più importante per i processi di export e sono strumenti in continua evoluzione, in costante aggiornamento, quindi vi invitiamo a restare un po' al passo coi tempi su questo aspetto, e potete farlo anche misurando la vostra professione all'export attraverso i nostri assessment digitali online. Uno è Digitest ed è rivolto a tutte le aziende che vogliono approcciare i mercati esteri attraverso il digitale, quindi attraverso un brevissimo questionario potranno poi avere a disposizione un report che vi aiuterà a comprendere la vostra propensione e qual è il vostro livello di presenza online, perché viene poi prodotto un report molto approfondito anche sul vostro sito. E ancora Digicommerce, che è uno strumento nuovo che abbiamo introdotto per le aziende che hanno già un proprio e-commerce nel sito aziendale. So, questo qua è un esempio un po' di ragnatela, di benchmark che viene fuori. Tra l'altro questi assessment rappresentano anche il primo step di ingresso rispetto ai servizi digitali che noi abbiamo predisposto per le aziende della provincia di Milano, Monza, Brianza e Lodi, che sono gratuite. Poi ancora, una volta recepito questo assessment, potrete incontrare i nostri esperti all'interno del servizio Digitexpert per una durata di 30 minuti, anche questo è un servizio gratuito per alcune province. Poi ricordo, ecco, anche Digitexport fondamentale per tutte le vostre problematiche legate invece alla contrattualistica, ai pagamenti, alle dogane, fiscalità, marketing internazionale. Anche questo è un servizio gratuito sui territori dove siamo presenti col nostro network attraverso le camere di commercio. Poi ancora la formazione Nibri, che offre un calendario di interventi formativi il prossimo 15 giugno sugli Incoterms. E questo è il nostro calendario dei prossimi eventi, come sapete sempre in continuo e costante aggiornamento, perché aggiungiamo sempre attività sperando poi di avervi sempre numerosi ai nostri appuntamenti, così come oggi. Allora, a questo punto passo la parola, chiedo appunto alla nostra relatrice Lorella Zappa di attivare la propria webcam. Intanto qua vedete i nostri contatti, mentre la relatrice attiva vi do qualche informazione di servizio. Intanto torno sul programma della giornata. Eccoci Lorella, buon pomeriggio e grazie innanzitutto Mi fa molto piacere aver Lorella come relatrice perché oltre ad essere una gran professionista, insomma, ci conosciamo da diversi anni, quindi sono contenta di poter condividere questo spazio. Volevo dare 2 indicazioni operative. Allora, come di consueto, potete porre le vostre domande utilizzando la sezione chat domande che vedete nel pannello di controllo alla vostra destra. Sarebbe preferibile porle in inglese, visto che l'intervento sarà in inglese, quindi per dare un po' continuità e dare un senso a quest'oretta che stiamo dedicando a questa tematica. Poi però, se preferite, vi sentite più a vostro agio a scrivere in italiano, potete farlo in italiano. Lorella però adesso si setta in inglese, resterà tutto il tempo, diciamo, interagirà con voi sempre in lingua inglese, questo per dare appunto, come dicevo in apertura, un po' un valore aggiunto a questa iniziativa. Quindi potete porre le vostre domande, potete anche chiedere la parola cliccando sull'icona mano alzata, io così capirò che volete intervenire e potrò aprirvi il microfono. Per ora questo è tutto, lascio quindi la parola alla nostra relatrice. Do adesso, Lorella, la possibilità di condividere il tuo schermo. Ok, adesso puoi condividere. Perfetto.
Okay. So first of all, thanks a lot for inviting me here today. And I would like to start by saying a few words on my personal background. As you know, my name is Lorella Zappa. I'm a freelance court translator and interpreter, and I'm specialized in Germanic languages, that is in German and English. I work as a language consultant and a language trainer. I lived abroad for many years where I completed my university studies, and I have gathered professional experience in European and non-European countries. I worked in the diplomatic field, but also in international trade, business management, industry, and education. I come myself from an entrepreneurial family. My father started his business in 1957, but when he prematurely died, my siblings and I inherited the family business. At that time, I was working at the Italian embassy in the German Federal Republic, where I had been transferred after the fall of the Berlin Wall. And I felt morally bound to resign and come back to Italy and just give a hand in the management of the family business. And that's what happened. In fact, I resigned, I came back to Italy, and there we started our internationalization process, which enabled us to differentiate our outlet markets and improve our receivables turnover. I worked in the family business as an export manager until the company export rate reached about 70% of its turnover. And then I sold my quotas and went back to my old passion, that's languages. Since 2002, in fact, Logiche di Comunicazione offers international companies a number of services, of linguistic services that range, as I said, from translation and interpreting services down to training courses in German and in English, and also Italian for foreigners. My customers are not only multinationals, but also companies that operate on international markets, and especially professionals who need to improve their language competencies quickly That's why I use special techniques, that's memorization techniques and techniques of neuro-linguistic programming. You certainly have wondered the reason why this webinar in English. Well, as you probably know, English is the third most spoken native language in the world, after Chinese and Spanish. This is largely due to the influence of the British Empire and, of course, of the United States, but also to the fact that in comparison to other languages, English is relatively easy to learn. For this reason, English has become a sort of lingua franca, and especially the language of trade and business. Speaking English will certainly help you to overcome language barriers with your customers and help you to establish more durable business relationships. Now, why should you see this webinar? Well, this webinar intends to give you only a rough idea, a general overview of the most business organizations in countries of common law. Obviously, it does not pretend to be exhaustive, but you may profit of this information when you get an inquiry from a customer you don't know. And after the company name, you read abbreviations like LP, LLP, LTD, Inc., Corporation, LC, PLC. So why is it important to know how your potential customer is structured? Can, and especially his degree of liability, can help you, first of all, to figure out with whom you're dealing. Secondly, it can help you to decide the safest terms of payment and the degree of credit you want to grant him. And last but not least, in case things go wrong, to whom you must refer if you want to recover your payments, your credits. But let's get into it now. So, business organization. What is a business organization? Well, as we can read from this first slide, a business organization is an organization that trades under a particular name, controls the way in which land, labor, and capital are used, and takes decisions on the way products are made and marketed. So there are many ways in which business of the private sector can be organized, and the different organizations vary according to the country in which you would like to set up your company. In fact, in the USA, business incorporate at state level, and incorporation law differs from state to state. So it's the state law that defines the different forms of business organizations available, and the state also requires certain definitions, certain corporate endings and their meanings. But let's move on to the next slide. So, today we are going to go through the most common types of business organization in countries of common laws. And we are going to analyze them starting from the simplest to the most sophisticated ones. Okay, oops, sorry. So we are going to talk about sole vendors, partnerships, limited companies, cooperatives, franchises, and multinationals. So let's start now with the simplest form, the sole vendor. So sole vendor, also called sole trader or sole proprietor. This is very similar to the Italian ditta individuale. I'd like to tell you first that it won't be possible to find a perfect match between these forms of business organizations and their Italian equivalents, because obviously the legal frame is different, okay? But let's see what a sole vendor or a sole trader is. This is the simplest and most common type of business. The sole trader operates on his own or with the help of his family. He may have one or more employees. But what you have to remember is a sole trader is absolutely responsible for whatever the company does and undertakes. A sole trader is unlimitedly liable, which means he is personally responsible for all his company debts. So why would you want to be a sole trader? Well, of course, there are pros and cons in this type of business organization. First of all, less capital is required and it's easier to set up this kind of business. Secondly, decisions can be taken easily. Profits don't have to be shares, and special services and personal attention for customers is possible. But what is the downside to it? Well, first of all, limited or unlimited liability. As we said, this means if your business incurs debts, you have to pay them with your own personal assets. So you have to put your own money in. Secondly, you have a limited amount of capital at your disposal. Furthermore, you have long hours work and fewer holiday. And lastly, your prices may be higher than those of your competitors. But let's see, where is this type of business organization common? Well, as we see here, this is common amongst craftsmen and skilled people, which means electricians, plumbers, but also owners of small shops like cafes, restaurants, flower shops, butcher shop, hairdressers. So to sum up, let's go back to our sole trader first slide. So we said is a one-man business. Yes, because he operates the business on his own. So we can say is a one-man business. Remember, it's unlimited liability. Okay, so these are the two main traits of this simple business form. Okay, so now let's move to another type of organization, the partnership. Okay, so you don't want to do it on your own. Why don't you get someone to join in? That's what we call the partnership, huh? Okay, so partnerships. So partnerships we have three types of partnerships, okay? Unlimited, limited, and limited liability partnerships. But let's see, what is a partnership really? Well, a partnership is an association of two or more people who put together their capital, labor, and skills to carry on business in order to make profit. Partnerships are often formed to avoid the problems a sole trader may have in raising capital. But let's see what are the main traits of a partnership. Well, in a partnership, there are at least 2 and a maximum 20 members. As we said, these persons put together their capital and skills, labor and skills to make profit. In a partnership, the partners usually draw up a partnership deed or a partnership agreement, which lays down the numbers of partners, type of partnership, the amount of capital invested by each partner, in what proportions profits and losses have to be shared, a lasting period of the partnership, and voting rights. Well, where are partnerships common? Okay, partnerships are particularly common in small business sectors like retail trade, wholesale trade, manufacturing, and building companies. They are also common amongst professionals who have, though, another opportunity, and this is the third form of partnerships. They have the option of setting up a limited liability partnership. But let's see in detail what are the main traits of every single type of partnership. Let's start with the first one, and the riskiest one. Okay, unlimited partnership. Okay, this is, although, as I said before, it won't be possible to find a perfect match between these business organizations and their Italian counterparts. I would say that an unlimited company is in many ways similar to our Italian società a nome collettivo. This is also called ordinary partnership or general partnership. In an ordinary partnership, the partners, all of the partners called general partners, take an active role in the management of the business, and they are all liable for any partnership's debts. As you may have deduced, this is a very risky type of business organization, because if on the one hand it's relatively inexpensive and easy to set up, besides having also simplified fiscal treatment, and it's easy to dissolve. On the other side, your personal assets are not protected. And all the partners are unlimitedly liable for each other's actions and debts, which makes it the riskiest aspect of this kind of business organization. Let's move now to the second type of partnership, that is limited liability. Okay, a limited partnership, the abbreviation of which is LP. Okay, this type of partnership is very similar to our Italian SAS. In this type of partnership, we have two types of partners, general partners and limited partners. General partners participate in the day-to-day management of the business. Each partner is unlimitedly liable for the business debts, which means if someone has a legal claim against the partnership, they can sue any or all general partners. They can even lay claim to general partners' personal assets if the business assets of the partnership are not sufficient. But some of the partners may just want to invest capital in the partnership without getting involved in the business management. These partners are called limited partners, or also silent or sleeping partners, and they are limitedly liable for company debts, that is to the extent of the money contributed, of the capital contributed. Okay, but let's consider the pros and cons of these business organization, well, of partnerships in general. First, you have more capital to invest. Consequently, specialization is possible and expansion is easier. But what about the downside? Well, first of all, decision making takes longer, of course. Then profit and control of the business must be shared. And last but not least, disagreements may occur amongst the partners. But as we said before, there is a third type of partnership, which is a more formal one. It's called limited liability partnership. But what are the differences between an LP, stands for limited partnership, and an LLP? Okay, we'll find out in the next slide. Okay, so as we can read here, a limited partnership, that's an LP. In this kind of partnership, general partners are all unlimitedly liable. And this type of partnership needs just one general partner and one limited partner to be set up. But it's not a separate legal entity, okay? Let's say a limited liability partnership is a more formal type of partnership. It's a kind of a hybrid partnership. The two most important traits and differences with respect to the LP is that LLPs are separate legal entities, and moreover, they are flow-through entities for tax purposes, which means that the partners received untaxed profits on which they have to pay taxes themselves. Okay, so far, so good. Now, are you still with me? Okay, examples of professionals. We said LLP LLPs are quite common amongst professionals like doctors, architects, attorneys, accountants, and so on. Let's move now, after having seen sole trader and 3 types of partnerships. Now we are going to analyze limited companies. Okay, limited companies. So, limited companies are the most common type of business organizations, since people who want to invest in a business have, in the event of bankruptcy, limited liability. But let's see the main traits. The capital, well, first of all, they have limited liability, okay, which means that you have to pay for any company debts to the extent of the money invested, or to the extent of the shares held, okay, and obviously of the capital invested. In limited companies, you have a large number of shareholders. The shareholders own the company, but they do not run the company themselves. The capital is divided in shares, and profits are divided among shareholders according proportionally to the amount of shares held, and they are divided in dividends. Okay, but as we said, the shareholders are the owners of the company, but they do not run the company themselves. In fact, the real, let's say, the real control of the company lies in the hands of the board of directors, which decides the company's policy, and also appoints one or more managing directors, or CEO. Well, in countries of common law, especially in the UK and Ireland, and in Commonwealth countries, limited companies are required by law to hold an annual general meeting where the chairman of the board of directors gives an account of the company's activity of the last financial year, and makes forecasts as the development and the prospects of the coming year, of the company in the coming year. But what is important to remember is that limited companies is a kind of a macro category in which 2 types of more specific limited companies fall into, and these are private limited companies and public limited companies. So how would we translate limited companies into Italian? Well, I would translate this term with società di persone. Sorry, is società di capitali, whereas partnerships are società di persone. Okay, so now next is private limited company. So a private limited company, the abbreviation of which is LTD. Okay, private limited companies are very similar to the Italian società a responsabilità limitate. In many ways, there's not a perfect match, but they are very similar. They have small numbers of subscribers. It goes from 2 to 50. They must have the abbreviation LTD after the company name. This is required by law. The maximum share capital is £50,000. But the most important aspect of private limited companies, which differentiate them from public limited companies, is that their shares cannot be advertised publicly for sale, and new shareholders must be found privately, and the shares can be sold only prior approval of the other shareholders. This means that they cannot sell their shares on the stock exchange market, okay? And but only privately, which explains the term private in the company name. Okay, but what are the advantages and disadvantages? Well, first of all, the first advantage is limited liability. Absolute protection of your personal assets. And to consider is also the possibility of raise capital, an elevated ability to raise capital. And also, the owner can retain control of the business. On the other hand, it has high setup costs, both legal and administrative. And the company must be registered with the registrar of companies. So this is private limited companies. Let's see some examples of private limited companies. PwC, Cargill, Dyson, Autosmart, Clarks, Dell. Okay, private limited companies can become also multinationals, and most of them are multinationals. But let's see what next. Okay, a public limited company. Okay, so a public limited company in the USA is abbreviated Inc. or corporation, is defined corporation. They are very similar to private limited companies, with the difference that they can sell their shares publicly to the public. So they can list their shares and negotiate them on the stock exchange market. But let's see what are the main traits. They must have, by law, they must have the ending PLC after the company name. There's no limit on the number of shareholders. They must have a minimum share capital of £50,000, and as we said before, their shares can be quoted and negotiated on the stock exchange market. That is publicly, they can be sold publicly, which explains the term public in the company name. Well, the fact that they can sell their shares to the public represents, on the one hand, a big advantage because it allows them to raise capital and allows also shareholders liquidity. But that bounces back because by selling their shares on the stock exchange market, they have volatility in valuation, and this increases because they are beholden to financial markets. Okay, we have here some examples of public limited companies. UK, AstraZeneca, we all know that. Lloyd Banking Group, Vodafone, Unilever. In the USA, Walmart, Amazon, Apple, 4CVC Health, Pepsi, McDonald's, and so on. Okay, so to sum up, we've seen the simplest form of business organization, sole trader, 3 different forms of partnerships, as we said, unlimited, limited, and limited liability partnerships. We have seen what are the main traits of a limited company, and we also went through public and public limited companies. But as I said before, there are different ways in which a business can organize itself. And the next one is the cooperative. Okay, so now let's analyze together cooperatives. Well, they are owned and run by their members who may be single individuals or small businesses which combine for reason of mutual interest. They also represent an opportunity for unemployed people to enter the world of work. That's why the government usually supports them with low interest loans and tax rebates. As we can evict from the pictures on the slide, cooperatives are common in many areas, like the retail industry, construction and cleaning services. Cooperatives are sometimes set up by employees who turn into entrepreneurs because the company they used to work for went bankrupt or thought of relocate the company somewhere else. And this is the phenomenon of workers' buyout. So workers' buyout, it occurs when workers acquire ownership and control of the company. Okay. This is a very innovative way through which employees can save the companies they have been working for that face closure and can keep their jobs, ensuring that the know-how acquired over the years is not wasted. Well, we have had 2 examples in Italy of workers' buyout recently. The first is Reno Fonderie, ex-Lem Foundries. Okay, this company, Lem Foundry, went bankrupt in 2019, and 18 former workers of the foundry decided to invest their severance pay and their unemployment money to save the company and maintain their jobs, of course. They restarted production by making a series of investments necessary to improve the processes and recover the efficiency of the company. Another example is represented by Ceramica Noi, former Ceramisia. They are based in Umbria, in Città di Castello, and also here 11 former employees turned into entrepreneurs And in doing so, they saved their jobs. And after being told that the company would be relocated to Armenia. So, as we said, workers' buyout is an aspect of cooperatives, of the way of cooperating together. Okay, so much for cooperatives. Let's now move to another business organization, which is franchises. Okay. Are you still with me? Are you following me? I'm sorry, I cannot see your faces, so I don't have actually a feedback regarding your attention. So I hope it's not going to bore you to death. Okay, so let's see franchises. The franchise is a form of an organization where a larger, well-known company enters business with a smaller firm who wants to sell their products without having to invest a lot of money. The bigger company, called the franchisor, grants the smaller one, called the franchisee, the license to use its trademark and sell its products. The franchisor also usually provide the franchisee with training, commercial expertise, and financial contribution, of course, in return of an initial sum of money, which is called a franchise fee, and in return of an annual of a percentage on the annual sales turnover, called management service fee. Franchisors and franchisees must have an agreement, of course, the franchise agreement, that establish, of course, that grants the license for the franchisee to use to work with their trade, to use their trademark and to sell their products. Okay, so let's see why a franchisor is keen to start up a franchising chain. Well, the franchisor advantage is that it can expand its market shares by setting up distribution outlets all over the world quite cheaply. But also the franchisee has an advantage, and that is he can benefit from the franchisor's reputation on the market, thus having fewer risks of business failure and, of course, fewer costs in terms of advertisement or promotion, sales promotions. Okay, some examples. Okay, in Italy, well, we have McDonald's, which is all over the world. McDonald's, UPS stores, mailboxes, Tecnocasa, Calzedonia, Eurospin, Vodafone, they are all franchises. Huh? But are there any positive or negative aspects here too? Well, franchises come up with a already made business plan. And starting a franchise can make it easier to secure financing. It's easier. Franchises are less risky than put up an independent business, and it's also easier to get information about the franchisor. But on the other hand, franchise fee can add up, because the initial investment may be higher than what we have thought initially. And especially you are not so independent, you have less flexibility than in your own independent business. Moreover, the fate of your business isn't entirely under your control. For instance, let's suppose that the public all of a sudden turns against the brand and stops buying this kind of products. Well, you are absolutely vulnerable too. Okay. Well, this leads directly to the last point of my presentation, which is multinationals. Okay, I forgot to say some of the most successful examples of franchise businesses. Okay, in the USA, McDonald's, Burger King, that's fast food, okay? But also health in the automotive sector. Marriott International in the travel sector. Circle K in retail business. In the UK, we have AutoSmart, also in the automotive sector. Century 21, property and estate agency. McTools with in the sector of homewares and DIY, do it yourself, like Brico. And country grounds maintenance gardening. Okay, remember in Italy, Tecnocasa, Vodafone, Calcedonia, Vodafone, we said, what else? Mailbox and UPS. Okay, so let's move. Okay, this is a nice picture of McDonald's, which we can take as an example, both for being a multinational company, but also for being one of the most famous franchises. Okay. Okay, let's now come to our last business organization and more sophisticated one, multinationals. We all know what a multinational company is, but we like to repeat it. A multinational is a large corporation that operates globally. The ownership of a multinational is based in one country, and it has, of course, subsidiaries in other countries. The parent company or the mother company of a multinational may act as a holding company. What is a holding company? Is a company which holds a controlling interest by having 51% of the voting shares. Okay, a holding company has subsidiaries in other countries. What is a subsidiary? A subsidiary is a smaller company that is partially or entirely controlled by the mother company, by the holding. Most multinationals are PLC, like Fiat, Shell, Siemens, with manufacturing and sales outlets globally, I would say. But why do companies become multinationals? Well, first of all, because in this way they can access to raw material and cheap labor. Secondly, they can avoid trade barriers, foreign exchange fluctuations, and transport costs. Moreover, they can increase their knowledge of foreign markets. And last but not least, actually the most important aspect of a multinational is that they can win subsidies from the government, thus reducing the amount of money they have to pay for taxes. Okay, manufacturing is usually carried out in developing countries. The presence of a multinational company in a host country can be both beneficial, but can also cause problems. Okay, here we have some examples of multinational companies. We all know Pfizer and Amazon and Microsoft. Okay, so multinationals, as we said, why multinationals? Why do companies become multinationals? So we said access to raw materials and cheap labor, avoid trade barriers, foreign exchange fluctuations, transport costs, increase their knowledge of foreign markets, and win subsidies from governments and reduce the amount of taxes they have to pay. Okay, well, I decided to put this picture because I think Nike is one of the most suitable examples of a multinational company. Well, Nike, the athletic footwear and clothing manufacturing is, as I said, is a good example of a multinational corporation. Nike is based in Oregon, USA. It operates in 170 countries worldwide and has approximately actually more than 75,000 employees. The company was started by Philip Knight and Bill Bowerman in 1962, and it started life as a distribution outfit located in the trunk of Philip Knight's car. The name was Blue Ribbon Sports. It was only in 1972 that Philip Knight and Bill Bowerman decided to give the company the name of Nike, of course, named after the Greek goddess of victory. And it was only in June 1972 that the first shoe with a swoosh logo was introduced. Of course, it took decades for Nike to establish the great name they have today, and in fact, in the early 80s, many people in the United States criticized Nike for manufacturing its products, his shoes, in developing countries. So where people are paid low wages and work in very poor working condition. This led to the boycott of Nike's products. But this didn't stop Nike from keeping on doing business. The major turning point for Nike was 1985, when the greatest basketball player came to the company, so Michael Jordan. And actually, even if the company denies it, I think is absolutely responsible for Nike's success. Okay, so today Nike has sales for approximately 45 billion US dollars and a revenue of almost $7 billion US dollars. As we said, multinationals can create benefits for the host countries, but they can also, they may also cause problems. To avoid that, Nike, together with Reebok and other US sports clothing manufacturing companies, in 1997 signed the American Code of Conduct. For overseas production, the signers promised to provide model factories, require workers to be over 15 years old, and limit the work week to 60 hours and allow workers to organize themselves. Okay, so, but what are the main characteristics, as we said, of a multinational company? What are the pros and cons? Well, a multinational company invests money in the host country. It creates employment and training opportunities. It brings experience and working methods. Well, host countries profit from advanced foreign technology introduced by multinational companies. And of course, multinational represent the source of taxation revenue for the host country, for the host countries. But sometimes, depending on the type of multinational companies, but sometimes multinationals use only unskilled work, unskilled labor, and sometimes, most times, they pay low wages. Sometimes they oblige their employees to work in poor conditions. We've seen lately all these problems around Amazon employees who are compelled to work in very stressy conditions, but we'll see. Some multinational companies, depending on the type, may also create environmental problems, and definitely they can exert an extremely strong influence on local governments, affecting also their policies. So, as you know, in last December 2021, the European Commission proposed a directive which should ensure minimum effective tax rate for the global activities of large multinational groups. We don't know what will happen because so much money, so many financial interests are involved in this. We hope it is possible to do it. We'll see what happens. So I hope you are still all with me, and well, this is the end of my presentation. Okay, hope it goes. Okay, as a conclusion, I like to think of business organizations as living creatures. They grow or shrink according to external circumstances and business opportunities. But very important, there are no walls between these different business organizations. Actually, some large PLCs started as simple partnerships, like, for example, the partnership between Paul Allen and Bill Gates, or between Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. So the different types of business organizations represent, in my opinion, a sort of X-ray of their actual development stadium. Their transformations are aligned to their goals, to their company goals, to their missions, and to the way they face market challenges. The rapid evolution of technologies is changing our way to do business. Business organizations will have to adapt quickly if they want to find new opportunities. So this is the end of the webinar. I hope you have gained an insight into the most common business organizations, and especially I hope that this webinar was worth seeing and it will be useful for you. So if you have any questions, first of all, I'd like to thank you for your attention and for your presence. Thank you very much. So if you have any particular questions to ask, I'm here. Go ahead. I can't hear you, sorry.
Sì, ciao, scusami Lorella, arrivo.
Yes. Ok.
Riprendo la condivisione. Ecco. Grazie. Allora, non sono arrivate domande. Io vado in italiano perché lo sai che preferisco in questi contesti.
Well, first of all, I have a question, if I may ask. I'm dying for finding out if you could follow the webinar, if you understood all I explained, or if it was too difficult.
No, non penso che fosse semplice. Chiediamolo al pubblico che sicuramente è stato più attento di me perché nel frattempo ho anche lavorato su altre cose. Sì, noi metteremo a disposizione il materiale da parte per le aziende, per cui se poi, nel senso che potete poi comunque, scusa sto controllando se c'è qualche domanda, no, c'ho delle messaggi in chat ma non sono domande per te. Li metteremo a disposizione.
They can ask also in Italian if they prefer.
Sì, infatti, come ho detto all'inizio. Potete anche scrivere in italiano ovviamente, però non vedo domande. Quindi a questo punto io ringrazio tutti per la partecipazione e per l'attenzione. Vedremo poi anche i vostri feedback nella survey che viene chiesta sempre in chiusura. Segnalateci se è stato interessante l'argomento, se c'è magari qualche punto che gradite approfondire in modo da insomma lavorarci su anche per i prossimi mesi. Come Promos Italia sapete rimaniamo sempre a disposizione per approfondimenti sulla tematica ma anche su tutte le altre tematiche legate all'export e quindi vi invito a restare sempre insomma collegati con noi, a tenere monitorati i nostri strumenti di comunicazione, newsletter, i social, LinkedIn, eccetera. Grazie Lorella.
I want just to say something. If you need any further information here too, or if you need any clarification, feel free to contact me because underneath you saw www.logicadicomunicazione.it. So you're very welcome to write me. I'll be delighted to answer you.
Ok, benissimo. Grazie Lorella, grazie al pubblico. Chiudo la trasmissione. Arrivederci. Thank you Lorella.
Bye.